Since we are talking about our future, and as promised, I want to call the ambassador, who is actually in charge of our future, as it happened in well, we just put you in charge, so you are. Nowadays, speaking of that.
Do you really want an Azerbaijani ambassador? I don't think so.
But if you could make some concluding remarks about, thank you, first of all, for coming and pretty much bringing us all together as a good diplomat should do. And if you could make some concluding remarks about this day of discussion.
Thank you, Professor Senat. I think, first of all, I want to thank all of you for being here today, especially thank you to Jim and for everybody who put together this event. I know Mr. Karagözov worked really hard to make this happen. Thank you. And of course, to both Mr. Kovani and Mr. Grigorian traveling all the way from far away, that's good to have you. We talked a lot about narratives, I think, and it's a difficult issue because we have a narrative in our work as well. I mean, it defines how we structure our arguments in discussions and negotiations with each other. It's a good thing that we want to change the narrative. We spoke a lot yesterday with Professor Karagözov, but I am also concerned that so much effort and focus is put on it. I understand for social sciences, that's what you have to do, that's what it keeps you going. But at the same time, with the same explanation would apply that the negotiator would not be interested in solving the problem because that's what keeps him, his job or her job in place. So let's not go for that. That is not healthy. That's one of the things I think we need to remember. You said something about the future. One thing which struck me, Mr. Karagözov has talked about IDP population. Working with UNHCR in Azerbaijan, I spent a lot of time in IDP camps. And by the way, they are no longer IDP camps. It's one of the interesting things which Azerbaijani government has done. The first expenses from the sovereign investment fund, that's oil fund, was spent actually on improving the relationship, the conditions, moving people away from the camps. I think that's at least a bit of a good step towards making sure that the conditions are healthy enough for people not to be stuck there. But what really struck me there is that those people, actually, while those people have suffered perhaps the most in terms of the conflict, they also, the people who lived with Armenians and Armenian neighbors all their lives. And what I noticed that while in Baku, for instance, or in the political circles, you have an abstract understanding of more of a narrative person. So all the talking points you would get from so many people in Baku. People who express their grievances in the camps to a very simple question: if we actually negotiate an agreement, and what I specifically asked the guys, I sat down in every camp I could, said, if we do get the agreement done, would you agree to live with an Armenian in the same village? And all of them said the same thing. They said, look, it's not going to be easy, but we did it before, so we'll try again. So at no point had any person told me I cannot live next door to an Armenian. Of course, there was some modification. Some would say, why don't we try first a little bit, one-to-one, maybe next year, maybe we will. Some said maybe is there going to be security, police presence, but those are technical issues. At no point anybody said that that's a possibility. I think that's a very important factor because those people have no idea about the narrative. They don't know about the discussion. They don't know about what negotiations are all about. They don't know many things like self-determination or territorial integrity. I don't think they actually know what the negotiations, how they took place, but what they knew is that their lives were affected and they lived before okay, it didn't work out very well first time, maybe it will work the other. And I think that's a good sign. And that science is based on very pragmatic understanding of what the region is. And I think we need to step back, and you asked a very good question. What's going to be in 50 years? I think you answered there was a good answer. There will be a different language, common language people will be talking. I mean, don't forget, this place, the Caucasus had not always spoken Russian. There was a Persian before, there was a Turkish after, there was an Arabic, Latin, Greek, I mean, it doesn't matter. You know, maybe we'll learn Chinese in 50 years, God knows. I mean, that's just a matter of, but I think what is more important is that we have a vision of the future, how we move forward. I will just bring the example of Azerbaijan and Georgia. I mean, we talked about it, gates and all this. Azerbaijanis and Georgians have certain issues. In fact, if you look at the narratives, both in Georgia and Azerbaijan, they probably have some conflicting points. I don't really look too much for it, but probably they would find some. But the issue is not whether we have a conflicting narrative, but what are we going to do? How are we going to live? What are the options do we have? At the end of the day, I always ask the Armenians, what is the plan? I mean, what's going to happen next? The people who live in Los Angeles have a good answer. They say we'll stay in Los Angeles. That's a very good option, actually. That's a beautiful place. Everybody wants to live in Los Angeles. Yeah. But the people who live in Yerevan and people who live in Karabakh, people who live in Gyumri and other places in Armenia, it's not an easy answer for them. Yeah, what is the next? Where do we move from here? And the same question applies also for Azeris. I mean, okay, we're living okay, we could move forward, we have a good relation with Georgia, Turkey and all this, but our region is incomplete. And having this bleeding wound of Karabakh for another century, how are we going to survive? I mean, how are we going to move forward? So I think that should inform our understanding for the future. There's something else you talked about, which really, and it probably is a part of what you call narrative, but the reason, I noticed how, in a way, easy it is for Turks, for Azeris and Armenians to get together in many ways, because we live in the same society, we still speak a common language, we grew up with each other. There's, in many ways, there's an inherent hostility between the people, but at the same time, we all know each other pretty well. I am quite surprised by the excitement Turks and Armenians have about each other. And as Mr. Grigoryan pointed out, oh, you're normal people. Of course you're normal people. I mean, why is this even a surprise? And then I realized it's because for the longest time, the belief system about each other was informed only by one side. There was no contact. For instance, if you look at the events, compare the events of 1915, what happened in 1915, one of the worst things which happened to both Armenians and Turks was that right after 1915, there was 1917 revolution, then there was a Soviet Union, and then the Iron Curtain. So, right at the most difficult moment, instead of reconciling the two people, in addition to having an ethnic strife, there was an ideological Soviet Union versus Turkey, and then Soviet Union versus NATO, and all this kind of stuff. So all the factors resonated to divide the two peoples. And now what we're trying to overcome is actually symbolic issues of disagreement. Nothing real is there. I mean, Turks are not really going to attack Armenia and destroy it, and Armenians, I don't think any healthy-minded Armenian really thinks that they're going to get any territories from Turkey. I mean, this is not an actual, there is no actual material issue there. It's a symbolic issue. Look at Germany and France, or Germany and England, and the UK. I mean, these guys bombed more of each other than anybody else. Look at the Americans, they dropped a nuke on Japan. That was pretty nasty, but. So if you look at this, and imagine at the moment, right after you drop a nuclear weapon on Japan. Japan becomes a communist country, there is an Iron Curtain. Do you think you will drive Honda or Toyota now? Of course not. It would be a society which would need to overcome all kinds of difficulties. Therefore, I will leave the Turks and Armenians aside because this is an issue which needs to be worked on by both sides. In our case, we need to solve the conflict as soon as possible, not to deepen it to the point when the existing material issue of territory of Nagorno-Karabakh being under Armenian occupation today becomes solidified and deepened and resonated by the additional factor of deep ethnic symbolic hatred. I'll give you an example. Many Armenians think about Azerbaijan in terms of Sungai. Many Azeris, almost Azeris, if you think about what do you think about Armenia, first thing they would say is Khojalı. The tragedy of Khojalı is 600 people plus killed, terrible story. That's what they think. And the more we have a division, the more every Armenian will be perceived to Khojalı. And there's nothing I can do about that. Nothing. I mean, however CBMs you put there, however we get together for conferences, it's not going to change until people talk to each other. Until that moment that Rabin actually has to shake the hand of Arafat. But in order for that to happen, we have to solve the conflict. How to do that, I don't know. It's not an easy solution. But it is also true that there is a certain, it's almost a taboo question. Everywhere I go to an academic institution, everyone I talk to wants to talk about second track, that track 2, CBMs. Nobody really wants to take head on the actual problem. And that's where that's a problem. Track 1 is somewhere that we need to get moving. As much as we talk about all the track 2 and CBMs, we need to get the actual problem going, solved. The same way it goes for Georgia. The problem is not that the Ossetians dislike the Georgians or the Georgians dislike the Ossetians. As long as the guys are shooting at each other and their troops, as much as, even if all Ossetians immediately fall in love with the Georgians, it's not going to work. We know that. The actual problem is there. I was asked by a friend of mine, why don't Afghans and Iraqis like us? And I asked them, I said, what if I put an Arab guy in a uniform with a gun, with a beard, praying 5 times a day, walking around a campus somewhere? Even if he doesn't shoot at you, how long before you actually dislike that guy? I mean, there's an actual problem. I do hope that this conversation does translate into something which will help us to move forward. We're in dire need of this. I am actually, Mr. Gribelan is doing a great job for me. I think it's very much underappreciated. The reason is because the more people see each other as normal people, people they can agree with. Actually, you said a nice thing. You said there are nice people but we disagree with them. I think it's better than we actually see each other and agree with. I mean, there are many points we agree on. You spoke today about the bouquet of globalization. I think we all could do much on this, but the United States and Russia and the Europeans so much like to lecture us all the time about how bad we are. And then when all of us face very simple issues, none of our societies can do it well, neither Western nor our society. So I think it's time to find a way how we can move that forward in our region. I think there's a great hope, increasingly. I may be mistaken, and that would be my question to Mr. Grigorin. I think there are more and more people in Armenia who realize that the future of the country is more important than narrow ethnic perceptions. I think that I see more and more of these people in Azerbaijan, I think there are more and more people who understand that the future of the region is of paramount importance, that the successful region is a successful Azerbaijan, and that's what matters for us. I think in Georgia, more and more people understand that the neighborhood itself is very important. Georgians could play a very important role in bringing us together with Armenians, but also Georgians have their own issues to deal with, so I would rather have Azerbaijan and Armenia working together to make that happen. Now, a couple of things I want to say on the dangers of both pessimism and optimism, over-optimistic things. When this administration, Obama administration, came to power, the first thing they did was to institute and accelerate the Turkish-Armenian rapprochement. The idea by itself is very good. I mean, what can you say against the idea of Turks and Armenians getting together and talking to each other? That's a fine idea. The devil, of course, is always in the details. How you do that. How do you move forward? What do you endorse? What do you not endorse? The way that issue was approached, and I would agree with Professor Libaridan on this, has actually thrown the process back many years. Because had it been more inclusive, had it been more of understanding of regional sensitivities, I think that would have worked. Because Turkey needed to understand that it could become a regional leader and help Armenia and Azerbaijan to come to peace. Armenians would understand that they would get very good economic development and opportunities in exchange for moving forward with Azerbaijan on peace. And Azerbaijan would understand that getting progress in the peace agreement is linked to the overall development of the region and Armenia being included into the development. I think that would have been all around a win-win-win situation. Unfortunately, because we always think in the shorter terms and immediate results, that did not work out very well. But I think it's not all over. I mean, there's still possibilities for moving those things forward. So we need to think about how this could be brought together. I'm very happy to see that the Center for Strategic Studies in Baku is interested in a conference like this and is supportive of it, because that shows that there is an understanding in Azerbaijan that we have to do it. I think that understanding comes with a very simple realization that once you are an independent country, it's not only a flag, it's not just a symbol, it's not that your president goes to summits, it's also that you have a responsibility for both your nation and your neighbors. And in Azerbaijan, I think we do have that responsibility. The fact that we have to build pipelines which go to our neighbors probably helps us. Then we're interested in making sure that our neighbors are fine, because otherwise our pipeline is not fine. But that probably comes in a package altogether. So I'm very hopeful that this conversation will continue and it will involve more and more people. But that it also suggests some actual suggestions to people to policymakers, how to implement this and how to see the future light at the end of the tunnel. I am, in many ways, cautiously hopeful. Not because I see any particular signs for that, but also because I think we have no other option. There is no future in the region if there is no solution to our conflict. There can always be a very simple, pragmatic explanation to people on the ground. For instance, very often Armenians tell me, if we let IDPs, numerous IDPs from different regions, to come back to this particular region, how do we know we will be secure? We will feel insecurity. And I told them, that's exactly the opposite. The best way to guarantee you security is to let the refugees back. And they tell me how. I'll give you a simple explanation. And we have witnessed that in the region of Fizuli. There was a part of Fizuli which was recovered by Azerbaijani troops. They are rebuilding that territory. And once you put money into this, the most important thing you want to have is to have security, because you want to bring people back. But once you bring people back, you want them to stay there. Right? You already put money into infrastructure, water supply, buildings, or highways, whatever you put there. And Azerbaijan spends a lot of money on infrastructure. So the last thing Azerbaijani troops would want to do is to have any shooting in the region, because once the people move back, they want them to be there, to be safe, and to use the infrastructure. So in a way, if an Armenian lives next to an Azerbaijani village in Karabakh, that's the most secure place. Well, there could be some low-scale fighting and something like this on a very low scale, but there will be no massive confrontation, precisely because of the investment made, most in terms of human lives, in terms of monetary and infrastructure development. I think that is a very simple thing which people need to understand, that one side's security is actually the other side's security as well. They're very interlinked with each other. And thank God, since we don't have people who want to kill themselves to kill their neighbors, that is so far a very promising proposition. So on that, I think I will conclude. Those are not prepared and sound chaotic remarks, but I hope I didn't say anything which would be outside the discussion on this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador, and thank you everybody for coming. And this will be a really wonderful way to conclude our conference. And thanks again for everyone for coming and for spending time and effort and making this. And I think that applause go to Raouf, who actually came up with the idea and worked so hard to make it happen. So thank you very much. Thank you.